All right, now we're recording. All right, welcome everybody to tonight's class. Um, like I was just saying before we started the recording, we're going to talk about the Sabbath and how we ended up on what we have today, which is a complete mess. I know it. People are all over the place. You got Christians keeping Sunday, the Jews are keeping Saturday. Even some Messianic believers are keeping Saturday. Not everyone keeps the lunar or solar calendar. So we're going to start from this premise. If the calendar in the beginning was lunar solar, going by the sun and the moon, how did we get to where we are today with this Saturday observance? Because like I hear a lot from people that Saturday's always been the Sabbath, right? Goes all the way back to creation, continuous 7-day cycle, yada yada yada, has nothing to do with the moon. And so we're gonna look at that and see if that's actually the case. Okay. You guys got anything before we get started? Nobody has codes they want to share, right? All right, so let me go to my scripture. I should have had this pulled up already. So where does this all start? If you recall, in one of the last classes that we did, I took you to Exodus 16, where the manna happens, right? Where they're counting manna as an omer. This is the only place where you see omers and them gathering omers, not counting omers like days, but gathering omers as a measurement is Ezekiel 16. Excuse me. Got prophets on my brain. Exodus 16. Okay, so this is exactly 1 month after they left Egypt. And it is the same day when they get here as they left, which was the 15th day. Okay, so from this point, and by the way, this is the first time you see Shabbat referring to the people. Okay, the first time we see Shabbat is with Yah in creation, but the first time you see Shabbat and it's given to the people, this is it right here, right here. Now, one of those videos that I showed you last time of Rabbi Sachs talking, he was talking about it, and I didn't go into that part of it because he started making this about, they were complaining about the food, and then he tells a long story about a Chinese takeout place and a joke a Chinese person told him about, and it was all, and it was supposed to be about Exodus 16. He completely blew over what Exodus 16 was about. It wasn't just about the food. This is when they're stuffers running out and they're getting here and they are complaining about food. They're hungry, right? And Yah says to Moses, I'm going to test the people. I'm going to give them the work week and the Shabbat. This is where it happens. And he's going to have them collect manna every day. All right. So they got there on the 15th. And he's talking to Moses and telling them this. And the next day, which is the 16th, okay, he's going to have them start collecting manna. And they're going to do this all week long for 6 days, collecting twice as much on the 6th day and resting on the 7th. Now, they're going to do this over and over again. I mean, because this is continual. We don't just do it one time and that's over. So this is something we're doing week to week, new moon to new moon, Sabbath to Sabbath, right? So let me just jump down to 13 and let me just read it all so you guys can get it. We get here on the 15th day of the 2nd month after departing out of the land of Egypt, and the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said unto them, Would Elohim would to Elohim had died by the hand of our Adonai in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots and when we did eat bread to the full. For ye have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. And then said Adonai unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, which is the omer, that I might prove them whether they will walk in my law or no. So he's testing them, giving them a simple task. You're going to gather manna every day, and this is how you're going to do it, right? So he's giving them a simple instruction. And it shall come to pass that on the sixth day that they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. And Moses and Aaron said unto the children of Israel, at evening, then ye shall know that Yah hath brought you out of the land of Egypt. Wait a minute, I lost my place. And at evening ye shall know that Yah had brought you out of the land of Egypt. And in the morning, then ye shall see the glory of Elohim, for he that heareth your murmurings against Yah, and what are we that you're murmuring against us? Moses said, this shall be when Yah shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, the quails, and in the morning bread to the full. That's the 16th. For Yah heareth your murmurings, which ye murmured against him. And what are we? Your murmurs are not against us, but against Yah. And Moses spake unto Aaron, saying unto the congregation of the children of Israel, come near before the Yah, for he hath heard your murmurings. And it came to pass that as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of Yah appeared in the cloud. And Yah spoke unto Moses, saying, I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel, speaking to them, saying, at evening shall ye eat flesh, and in the morning shall ye be filled with bread, and ye shall know that I am Yah your Elohim. And it came to pass that in the evening the quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay around about the host. And when the dew was laid up, when the dew that was laid was gone up, behold, upon the face of the wilderness there lay a small round thing, as small as a hoarfrost on the ground. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, it is manna, for they wist not what it was. And Moses said unto them, this is the bread which Yah hath given you to eat. This is the thing that Yah hath commanded. Gather of it every man according to his eating, an omer for every man, according to the number of your persons. Take every man for them which are in his tents. And the children of Israel did so, and gathered, some more, some less. And when they did met it with an omer, he that gathered much did nothing over, and he that gathered little had no lack. And they gathered every man according to his eating. And Moses said, let no man leave it till the morning. Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses, but some of them left it until morning, and it bred worms and stank. And Moses was wroth with them, and they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating. And when the sun waxed hot, it melted. Notice how it says the Sabbath is observed, and it's the 22nd verse, right? So I don't think that's an accident, you guys, because when you look at this, they get there on the 15th. Moses has told all of what I just shared with you on the 15th. They're resting, by the way. This only works if the first day is the new moon, and then every Sabbath after that will line up the 8th, the 15th, 22, 29. You guys have heard me say that over and over again. But every new moon, this is what it will look like right after that. So whatever day that falls on a Gregorian, the 8, 15, 22, 29 of that month, whatever day it is going to be the Sabbath. So they got there on the 15th. Yah hasn't told them that what he's going to do until this moment. But I suppose that he's already synchronized them, because he had them doing the feast a month before, and they left on the 15th after the Sabbath. The next day is the 16th. If they collect bread for 6 days, collecting twice as much on the 6th day, and then rest the next day, that's the 22nd. That's the very first verse where we see where the Shabbat is given, right there. And if you do it all over again, the next one's going to be the 29th. Then you have a new moon. That's going to be either day 30, or the end of your month. It could even be 29 or 30 days, by the way. Never 31. It's either going to be 29 or 30. Now, if there's 2 days in a new moon, you've got 29. Day 30 is a new moon. New moon day, that day 1 of the next month. So that's 2 days, right? And it's not always like this. Sometimes it's like this. Then that 30th day goes on this month before, and the new moon starts the new month. So you have 30 days in that previous month and you started a new month. Okay. That's when you have a new moon time. You have to look and see where it's going to fall on. It could be a 1-day new moon or it could be a 2-day. This is why it's really important. Now, in ancient times, this day was declared by the priest of the temple. Even in the time of Babylon, you guys, they were getting word from Israel, all the way from Israel, by lighting bonfires on all the hills, all the way to Babylon, just to tell the people in Babylon, the Jews that were there, that it was the Sabbath. Okay? We discussed that. We heard the rabbis talking about, or Sachs talking about that in one of the last times we met. This became a problem after a while because sabbateurs would come in and light the fires on different days. And it's caused a lot of commotion. Okay? Now, this is before the destruction of the temple, right? This is in between the destruction of the first temple and the second temple, because we're talking about Babylon. So the first one's already been destroyed. They're lighting fires to let everybody know, but eventually that's rebuilt, right? There's another temple when Yeshua comes back on the scene, but then the same thing happens again. It's destroyed, right? But they were keeping it just like this. If there was an issue with the calendar, somebody in the New Testament would have pointed this out, whether it be Paul, one of the disciples, or most certainly Yeshua would have addressed this, yet none of them did. That needs to be said. Why is that? Because there wasn't a discrepancy with it yet. We know exactly when they went off the rail and started doing something else. That's never been a mystery, you guys. And I've told people for years, but we got this thing called cognitive dissonance. And some people, even though when they're looking at truth, they cannot process that information. It goes right over them. Okay. So why did the day get fixed in the first place and where we ended up now? Right. So let's fast forward to the temple's been destroyed, right? They've been having troubles with declaring the Molad, the new month, which is the new moon. It's going to be a 1 or 2 day thing, right? Which is probably if it was only a 1-day event, then it wouldn't have been so hard. Does everybody follow that? But because it's a 2-day thing, they had to get the word from the temple, and then the priest would share it with everybody else. Now, if everybody did their own thing, what do you think would happen? Same thing we have today with the lunar solar. Speaking of the lunar solar, everybody would be on a different day, right? Because Marty might go out and sight the moon in Arizona and she don't see it, and she sees it the next night. But I saw it tonight, right? And so so we get off by a day. Does everybody see how that could happen, right? This was the concern. This was the concern. Now, Yah's calendar does not line up with the Gregorian calendar, okay? The Gregorian calendar came about in the 1500s. Before the Gregorian calendar, we had something called the Julian calendar, which were 8 days in a week, right? And then when they switched over, they removed 10 days from the calendar to try to reconcile and offset some discrepancies and try to fix some things with the days had gone off. Okay. So it's been a mess for a while, especially when you try to keep 2 calendars over one. Have you ever wondered why the Jews' calendar lines up with the Gregorian, and why their Sabbath is something called Saturn Day, which, by the way, is named after a Roman god of Saturn? Okay. Why would Yah make his Shabbat on Saturn's day line up? Okay. And some will say, well, Jonathan, it was his day first, and then they perverted the day. No, that's not how this works. He tells us in the scriptures that the moon determines the moedim. It always marks the Sabbaths, okay? Always. If you don't observe the new moon and you just keep a 7-day continual thing, you will get off in your years eventually, okay? And that's what's happened. So we get to, all right, so the temple's been destroyed. The second temple's been destroyed. The Jews have been under Roman rule for several hundred years. We get to the time of Hillel II. I should have had this pulled up too. Hang tight, guys. I want to pull this up and read it to you. You guys know who Hillel II is? Hillel II was an elder, one of the rabbis. He was also a priest, but he was also a mathematician. He was a very smart man. And in the time that he lived, which was 320 years to 365 years after, 300 years after Yeshua, okay? He was not a contemporary of Yeshua. And this is not the Hillel from the Bible times, because there was a Hillel in the time of Yeshua too, which was Hillel the elder, okay? But this is Hillel II, a fifth generation. He was an Amora of the fifth generation in the land of Israel. He held the office of Nasi, which is prophet of the Sanhedrin, between 320 and 365. He was the son of the successor of Judah III. He is sometimes confused with Hillel the elder, as the Talmud sometimes simply uses the name Hillel. In two instances, his name is quoted in connection with an important decisions in Jewish law. One, Jose ben Abin expounds to him a law, and the other Hillel cites in the Mishnah to establish a law. The Emperor Julian the Apostate was gracious to Hillel, whom he honored on a number of occasions. An autographed letter to him, Julian assured him of his friendship and promised to ameliorate further the condition of the Jews. Before setting out for the war with Persia, Julian addressed the Jewish congregation a circular letter in which he informed them that he had committed the Jewish tax rolls into flames, that is, desiring to show them still greater favors. He has advised his brother, the venerable patriarch Julius, to abolish what was called the sin tax, right? So we get to one of the biggest things that he did, fixing the calendar, okay? Fixing the calendar. Now, the Jews were under Roman rule since before the time of Yeshua, all the way through that, all the way down to the time of Hillel. And this has been rough too, right? So Titus destroyed the temple. 300 years later, they are completely dominated by Rome, okay? There's no question of that. And by the way, this has also been the time from that time to Hillel's time where a lot of believers were killed, and Rome was really brutal to them. They put them in the Colosseum and the lions and, all that kind of stuff. Brutal to them. So Constantine comes along, and we know the story of Constantine. He becomes a Christian, right? Or he becomes the father of the Christian church, the Catholic Church. And I know there's some will tell you a little differently. That's not how it came about, and that's not exactly true. Constantine was an later Roman leader that apparently believed in Yeshua, but still held on to pagan traditions, okay? I think it was out of convenience for him. I think he got tired of, the Christians, and instead of you can't beat them, you lead them, right? And that's kind of what he did. Well, what he did with Hillel and the Jews, because the Jews were not favored. Matter of fact, they were kind of blamed for what happened to Yeshua, even though the Romans had killed them. The Romans didn't let them forget that they had betrayed one of their own, and even they believed that he was the Messiah. The Romans did, or these did, the later ones. Becomes Christianity, Catholicism, right? Well, Constantine does not want the Jews and Christians to have the same Sabbath, right? Nor the festivals to ever fall on the same day, like Easter. Passover and Easter should never fall on the same day, right? This was a big deal. And so, under stress, Hillel was forced to fix a calendar so that the Sabbath would not ever be on a Sunday, the day of the sun. Okay? This was an important day for Romans. Why would he think that they would ever fall on Sunday? If that was a thing, why would he ever think that it would ever fall on Sunday? Does anybody know? Let me show you what 2025 looks like. Let me just give you a kind of short rundown on what happens with Yah's calendar when you try to match it with the Gregorian calendar. Same thing would have happened on the Julian, where the new moon is going to float. You ever heard about Yah's days on the calendar float from year to year, right? You know why that is? Because the moon has motion and it moves. It's not going to be on, if you're going by the Gregorian and Yah's calendar, it's not going to be the same day every month. Good example. Day 1 of any month is New Moon Day. You see that? Number 1, January 1st, Wednesday. February 1st, Saturday. March 1st, Saturday. April, it's a Thursday. Tuesday. Everybody see that? New Moon Day floats all over the place, right? Here's why it matters when it comes to the Sabbath. Everywhere you see the 1, let's look at this. You see the 1? What's under that 1 week later? An 8. What's under that 1 week later? A 15. 1 week later, 1 week later. You see that? 8, 15, 22, 29. Doesn't matter what month you look at. Look at this one where it actually does line up to the Saturday Sabbath. Look at that. 1, 18, 15, 22, 29 would be right there. 2 months in a row. You could possibly have it 2 months in a row where you have New Moon Day fall on a Saturday, and therefore all of your Shabbats would fall on Saturday for that month. But look what happens to the next month. New Moon Day falls on a Tuesday. So now our Shabbats are Tuesday for the month. Let's look at the next month, May. Thursday. So all of our Shabbats are going to fall on a Thursday. Does it ever fall on a Sunday? Yeah. There are times where it does fall on a Sunday. Let me see right here. June. Look at that. Romans would be mad at this point because now we got Jews keeping the Sabbath on Sunday. Not every month, but sometimes. You guys see that? This is what we mean by floating around. Now, do you understand what it means to fix a calendar in this context? So if they were observing the solar and lunar in ancient times, meaning they were following the new moons, and we know this for sure because the Bible says they were keeping new moon. What does it mean to keep new moons? Well, the new moon tells you when your Shabbat's going to be 7 days later. 7 days later. Watch February. New moon's on a Saturday, right? Look what the next Shabbat is a week later. Now, that's day 8 of the month, but it's day 7 of the work week, folks. That's 2 different things. You've got the month and the work week, and then you got days, right? Day 16 will always be, when you got this going on, day 16, 15 is your Shabbat. Day 16 is always the beginning of the week, always the first day of the week. This is why it's important at crucifixion time, 14, 15, 16, he was crucified on the 14th, went into the tomb, was there on the 15th, was out of there on the 3rd day, not 3 days, 3 nights, you guys. I know what he said, but he wasn't speaking literal one time. Okay, he was saying like this. Everywhere else it says he came out on the 3rd day. Well, that's different in Judaism. It's today, tomorrow, and the 3rd day. Everybody follow? So if you're following the new moon and you have a government that's oppressing you that has a calendar called the Gregorian. Let's just assume that they were on the Gregorian, not the Julian. It just makes it easier. I don't have 8-day weeks here for you. But you see what happens. There is a threat that sometimes your Sabbath are going to fall on the very special Sunday that they worship the sun god, right? They don't want that to happen. So what does it mean to fix the day? Well, Constantine said, you can find this in the Constantine edict. Happened in the 300s, you guys, where Constantine said some really nasty, well, not nasty, but not flattering words about the Jews in his edict. And he said, we're not gonna do the things that the Jews did. These scoundrels that killed the Messiah. They are not going to keep the Sabbath by the new moons anymore. Right? No more feasts like that. No more counting weeks. Right? You want to know why they don't count weeks anymore? Because Constantine said you can't do it anymore. Eventually. So they start counting omers and make it into something completely different than what it was originally for. The counting of 50s, purposeful. The Jews stopped there purposely because they don't want to go to the other 50 because of what happened. You're gonna see that in the presentation I'm gonna put on YouTube. They stop at 50, and it's a rabbinic tradition, even though the scriptures tells you 50 is not where you stop. It's 7 Sabbaths complete, 50 days is added, right? So a fixed calendar would mean that we take that moon and we nail it down so it don't move. And where do we do that? Separating the months. And therefore, instead of your calendar looking like this, where your new moon is separated from the month, it separates the month. It's not part of the work week. You see this? That moon is new moon day. This is where you're starting your month. The very first work day of the new month is day 2 of the month. It's day 1 of the work week, but it's day 2 of the month. The very first work day on the next week is day 9 of the month. It's still 6 days, and the 7th is a rest day, right? You see that? Day 1, it's clearly 6 days. The Bible says you shall work 6 days, and on the 7th you rest. Didn't specify the outline of that, which has caused a lot of problems, by the way. I'd rather it would have outlined it, but God hid it for some reason. But if you observe the new moon, this is what it's going to do. It's going to line your Sabbaths up. Every one of them will be according to the moon, 8, 15, 22, 29. It is a part of the moon cycle. Now, let's say we don't separate the months with the new moon anymore. It's just part of the work week. Let's go back and look at the Gregorian. It's part of the work week. What does that mean? That means we are separate. And by the way, when they did this, they decided to only do a 1-day new moon instead of 2 and just make it even for every month, which, by the way, will cause problems after a while, you guys. You'll start accumulating days and things will start running into each. And this is why you got to have invalidation. We're going to see that in the papers that I'm going to show you here in just a minute. This was the problem they run into. There's a constant calidation that they had to do. So now the new moon doesn't separate, it does separate the months. It does not determine your Sabbaths anymore. It's just part of the work week. You see that? So new moon days can fall any day of the week, depending on the count from month to month. It jumps around. Everybody follow? But it's one continual 7. You see why every month is different. Saturday is going to be different every month. 7, 14, 11, 18, 25. The next month, the next month happens to be by the moon. The next month, same thing, by the moon. The next month, look how it changes. 5/20, 5/12, 19, 26. The next month, 3/10, 17, 24, 29. It changes over and over again. It's never the same. Yet, anytime you see the Bible ever speak about a Sabbath, It's either 8, 15, 22, or 29. One of those. Now, any one of those is a benchmark. For instance, if we know for sure that in the month of February, 15th is a Shabbat, then we also know that the 22nd is a Shabbat and the 8th is a Shabbat. So if the Bible gives you one day, then you know what the other ones are. Does everybody follow?
Very good for you.
Right? And there's several places in the Bible where the day is given. Okay? And usually it's the 15th. All right. So what they did, what Hillel had to do. Yes, go ahead, Marty.
Why don't you like chicken?
You don't like barbecue.
You can't even taste the
She's not
barbecue.
talking to me.
Try it. You'll see what I mean.
Bless her heart. So Hillel was forced to nail that thing down and come up with a calendar. Let's go back to the article there of Hillel. So we can see that it's pretty universal that something happened during the time of somebody named Hillel, where we see where there's a fixing of a calendar, meaning or implying explicitly that it's different than it was before, right? Anytime you fix or change something, that's typically, something different, right? He is traditionally regarded as the creator of the modern fixed Jewish calendar. This tradition first appears in a response of R. Hai Gaon, written in 992 AD, cited by this rabbi here in his Sefer HaIbur, written in 1123. The citations explicitly refers to the year that this event happened. 670 of the Seleucid area, which corresponds to 358 to 359 CE. So it's historical fact that the calendar was changed from something previous to now what we have now. And I want to point out this. You see where this rabbi is talking about this, which is in 992. You might notice that this is several hundred years after Hillel, right? You know why? Because they had issues with it, with fixing the calendar, because they had to do all kinds of calculation and calidation to make things line up, especially feast days. It caused a lot of problems, you guys. And so that's what these papers, these peer-reviewed papers that I got for you, I got two for you that I was directed to by a couple of rabbis, friends of mine, on this issue where there's been debate. It's all been taught. It's all known. This is not a conspiracy. This is well known. The thing is that most religious Jews don't have a problem with it. And I told you why. It's because the Talmud says that the rabbis have the power to change anything they want. And when they do, it's good in heaven. I mean, that's what they say. So they have no problem. Hillel doing it basically with a gun to his head, not literally, but under duress. He did it. Wasn't an easy thing, all right? However, a number of documents have been found to indicate that the calendar was not fully fixed in Hillel's time. That's what I just told you. Because in 992, they were talking about it even more. 500 years later, they still had issues with it. So it wasn't fully fixed in Hillel's time. Most famously, a letter found in Cairo from the year 835 indicates that the holidays were observed on different days than those predicted by the current calendar. What current calendar? The 7-day continuous Sabbath, Saturday. Because if you got a continuous 7-day, you could just lay it out and say, oh, well, here it is. Guess what? When they did that, the dates don't line up. And they start scratching their head going, wait a minute, what's going on? Well, things are lost over time, especially 500 years. And there's no internet. He can't go and Google, when did this change? No, he's got to go find the actual scrolls and the conversations and where did this happen? How did we get here, right? They had no way of knowing in some places. Okay, so 500 years later, they're still It's not a fixed, totally fixed to what we see today. Therefore, it's absurd to say, hear me out, that Yeshua died on a Saturday or Friday on the Gregorian calendar, even though it was a Julian calendar back then, but we'll calculate and it's Friday. No, you're full of crap. You're doing mind gymnastics and circular reason to try to fit a puzzle piece that don't fit. That's what that is. Circular reason. It doesn't even line up with the current calendar. Hear me. All right. The calendar did not reach its exact modern form until at least the years 922 to 924. So almost 1,000 years ago, right? Over 1,000 years. According to modern scholar Sasha Stern, Pagan only attributed to the establishment of a 19-year cycle. You know why he did that? Because they were having issues with a fixed calendar that is out of sync with nature. And so their seasons, Passover was getting pushed into a season it didn't belong, folks. The same thing's going to happen to you guys, or not you guys, those that are on the Zadok calendar with a fixed day. You keep that thing long enough, guess what's going to happen? You're going to accumulate days and you're going to be off, and it's not going to take long. About 4 years is all it takes for you start going, oh my gosh, we were wrong. So this particular rabbi establishes the 19-year cycle to fix it, okay? And not other details of the calendar till Hillel. The fixed calendar was of great benefit to Jews of his and subsequent generations. You know why? Because they no longer had bonfires, you guys. And when people would try to cite a moon that could possibly be 1 day or 2 days, they were all over the place. And they needed unity. They needed everybody to be on the same page. Okay? So the Jews already had a problem with unity before Rome forced him to go on a calendar that was completely foreign to what they were doing. And by the way, it's a combination of Yah's calendar, modified, highly modified, overlaid on a Roman calendar. That's what it is, Hillel's calendar, which is a Saturday observance. By the way, Hillel, in a disrespectful mood, because he didn't really like the Jews, well, he could have let them have Monday, Moon Day. Why did he make them have Saturn Day? What does Saturn represent? Anybody know? Somebody tell me. Does anybody know what Saturn represents?
Satan.
It represents Satan. And the Romans believed that this was the synagogue of Satan. And so forced them to take the day of Saturn as their Shabbat. That's the truth, folks. That's historical fact of what happened. Okay? Then this happened under Constantine again. Constantine was basically the first Catholic, leader before we had popes. Okay? He established the Roman Catholic Church. Okay, and it was highly pagan, very highly pagan. This is why we have things like Easter and Christmas and things like that, and they don't have no ties with Judaism, right? They did not want them to have a calendar that interfered with theirs, and so they forced them to have Saturday. The Romans took Sunday, and therefore their day would never fall on the Roman day. Does that make sense? Okay. The fixed calendar was a great benefit to Jews of his and subsequent generations. The Jewish calendar is lunisolar, and it still was lunar solar, even though it was fixed because they had to separate the months with the new moon. But it's not a true lunar solar in the sense that the moon tells you when the Shabbat is. Everybody follow? It's a partial. That's why I say it's a modified Yah's calendar, okay? Months are synchronized with the phase of the moon, but the average year length approximates the mean length of a solar year, and the Sanhedrin declared new months based on observations of the new moon, and added a 13th lunar month to certain years to ensure that the holidays would continue to fall in the same seasons of the solar year. Constantinus II, following the precedents of Hadrian, prohibiting the holding of such meetings, right? What meetings? No more new moon gatherings or new moon observations. This was an edict that was put out where they were erasing everything Jewish, okay, and forcing them onto this calendar. So it was under distress. They didn't necessarily want to do this. All right. The worldwide Jewish community, depending on the calendars sanctioned by the Judean Sanhedrin to observe Jewish holidays on the correct dates. However, danger threatened the participants in that sanction and the messengers who communicated their decisions to distant congregation, temporarily to relieve the foreign congregation. That rabbi there once advised Rabbah not to wait for the official intercalation. And when you are convinced that the winter quarter will extend beyond the 16th day of Nisan, declare a leap year, right? So this caused a lot of problems for the Jews, you guys, that this happened. It wasn't impossible. Mathematically, you can do it. You got to split the months with just one day of the new moon. Which is still going to throw you off on the real calendar, the agricultural calendar. And by the way, they were moving from an agricultural calendar to a civil calendar. And don't you know that, listen, they don't keep the new year at Abib. When do they do it? In the 7th month. It's all jacked up and it's all modified because of all this mess. Okay. So I get these sent to me. 2 peer-reviewed papers. If you guys want copies of this, I'll post it over in Discord. This is by Jean Alger. I don't know how you say that. A short history of the fixed calendar. The origin of the molad. The molad in Hebrew means the birth. So this is not talking about how they got to a Saturday observance. This paper is talking about that it was fixed and that they have intercalation problems. And there's some rabbis that figured out, hey, when did this start? And they figured out some discrepancies and they were trying to make it adjustments to it. So the point of this is that there's this discussion between these different rabbis, which are in scrolls, about these problems, right? All right, so here's what he says here in the introduction. And I don't know if I'm going to read 58 pages of this, but we'll get into some of it, and I'll post the rest of it over in Discord for you. It was always believed that the transition from the observation of what? Of the moon to the fixed calendar was clear cut, with the fixed calendar immediately adopting its definitive form in 358 or 359 at a date of inception. Indeed, according to a tradition quoted in the name of Rav Gaon, the present Jewish calendar was introduced by the patriarch Hillel II in the Jewish year, which is that year right there, 358, 359. The only discordant element with regard to this theory is that the calendar adopted immediately its definitive form was the fact that we find already in the Talmud that the postponement of Rosh Hashanah from Sunday was a later reenactment. Only some rare rabbinic authorities already recognize that the later character of this postponement. Indeed, a passage of the epistle Gaon implying that Rosh Hashanah of the year 505 CE was still on Sunday was generally considered as the result of a copyist mistake. It is the first decade of the 12th century that new evidence appeared after the discovery of a new document from Cairo. And by the way, this is the guy's credentials here. He's a engineer, structural engineer, but he has an interest in medieval Jewish astronomy and history of the Jewish calendar and Talmudic meteorology. He's the author of the Hilchot Kiddush and the HaKodesh Alphi and HaRambam, 1996. So he's a scholar. The former conviction of the Jewish calendar immediately assumed its definitive shape at the moment of its inception was shaken by two major discoveries. Discovery of letters attesting to the existence of an important dispute between the Babylonian community led by Gaion and a Palestinian community led by Aaron. Okay, so Palestine obviously is Jewish. So Jerusalem, they were lighting bonfires in the time of Babylon, right? And there was issues with the new moon because somebody was lighting them on the wrong days. Remember, we talked about this. So this was going back all the way back before Yeshua, that this was a problem. And they had to have something done about it. The discovery of the publication in 1922 of a document from Cairo, a letter from the Babylonian Resh Getula, showing that the Ketuva, Keviyah of the year 835, 836 was different than our present day calendar, and that the Babylonian community received its calendric information from Jerusalem, right? This last discovery was especially important. It proved beyond any doubt that almost 500 years after the inception of the fixed calendar of Hillel, the fixed calendar in its present day form still had not yet been instituted. Let me pause right there. Does everybody understand that? What we see today is not even what they were having issues with, so it's an even more modified, okay? It was not in the form that we have today. These two important discoveries were, in other words, it's not a 7-day Saturday, 7-day continuous cycle of Saturday from creation. It's impossible. And we've got scholars and rabbis talking about it right here. So there is no doubt about it, and it's not a conspiracy or something Jonathan's made up. I'm telling you the truth. Saturday came from Rome, and it was done to shame the Jews, putting them under the god Saturn, which is Satan. Okay. So, and there's like 50 more pages of this, you guys. I'm going to post this. We're already running a little bit of, we're at that time right now. I don't want to keep you guys too late. So I'm going to post these over so that you can read this. There's also another one that I have from another. I was directed to this one too. This is kind of similar. It's talking about the same kind of discrepancies and when the Jewish calendar came into be. Very interesting reading. This is from Bernard Dickman, who is a professional educator, and his works on biblical and Talmudic topics appear in tradition. So he's written some books, right? So he's into astronomy and teaching about the Jewish calendar, and he's also saying that there was issues, and so he's written a paper on it. He cites all the rabbis, you guys, from the Mishnah, the Rambam, and all the discussions about this, okay? So there is loads and loads of historical information, scholar information, okay? And it's not a great conspiracy where all of these people are just making it up, right? This is really what happened. The Jews went from a lunar solar calendar to a fixed calendar in the year 350 something, okay? No longer following the new moon. I wish I could find, I've been looking for it, and I should have had it pulled up for you, but the Constantine's edict, if you ever read that thing, he pretty much lays it out. And so if you understand what the edict says and then see what the Jews did, it makes sense of why they fixed that calendar. And by the way, they didn't get to choose Saturday either. It was chosen for them, and it was done, and it was given to them as a shame, as an embarrassment. All right. Now, don't get me wrong. Saturn was a revered god in the Roman, but this was because of the Jews and who they were, and they served one. This was meant to be an insult to them, to serve It's basically a slap in Yah's face. It's like them slapping their god, right? By saying, no, you're not going to keep his Shabbat. You're going to keep Saturn's, right? So it was done under distress. It is what it is. And the rest is history. You guys got any questions? I could have went on for another hour on that, you guys, but I'm not going to do that. I've been, I've been, let me just put it this way. I put about, I don't know how many, probably 30 or 40 hours in study this week in late every night, going to bed late, like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then doing it again the next day, all over because of the season that we're in. And so, like I said at the beginning of class, I've got about 2 hours and 6 minutes of recording that I've done on numbering 50 days, where that ends up, and then looking at that as it correlates to the feast and the timing of the Jerusalem siege in 70 AD. Because remember, I kept hearing people saying, counting the Omer. Omer goes back to remembering of the destruction of the temple. So that's where I went. When I looked at that, guess what I find? I find something called Tish B'Av. In the time that we're supposed to be keeping Shabbat, the Jews are doing something now called Tish B'Av, 3 weeks before the 9th of Av, which goes right through Shabbat. So 3 weeks before, if you look at that in connection to when the temple was destroyed, that puts them at where the walls were destroyed and they were coming into the temple compound. Those 3 weeks going all the way up to the 10th of Av, and then the next month they do it again with 3 more weeks of mourning. So it's 6 weeks total of mourning, right? I found something really interesting in Amos, where Yah led me to Amos, where he says to Amos, Amos, do you see this? What do you see? And he says, I see a summer fruit basket. And he shows him a basket with fruit in it, with grapes and with pomegranates and with wheat, right? And Yah prophesies over Israel. And it hit me like a ton of bricks because it made sense to me. He said, I will turn, by the way, Shabbat is commandment. It's supposed to be a joyous time. We're supposed to be very joyous because it's harvest season, right? You ever grown a garden and harvest season comes? It's kind of like a joyous time because you now get to enjoy the fruit of your labor, right? So it's like a really fun time. Same thing in Israel, where when this feast would come around, harvest feast, summer feast, it was a very joyous time, and they were commanded to be very joyous and to love one another and give freely. Free will offerings, like you just walk down the road and if God's blessed you, you bless somebody back. Ruth and Boaz, the story with the 4 corners, that happened in that same time, you guys, and that's why it's commanded that at your harvest time that you leave some for the poor, because that's a concept of Yah. Freely give, free will offerings, right? Joyous time. Amos 8, Yah says, I'm going to turn your festival feast days into mourning. And he did that. That's the teaching I'm working on now with. Yes, Marty, I see your hand.
Oh, sorry, Jonathan. I thought I lowered it. I was just going to say that all the days of the week were named after pagan gods.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so okay, so why you have to ask yourself, why do the Jews have a fixed calendar on a Roman calendar where their Sabbath is after Saturn's day? Well, it's because it was forced on them, right? And you're right, every single day of the week is after a god. Now in Yah's calendar, we don't have any. It's day 1, day 2, or Yom Rishon, right? We have names for it from what the Bible says. Day 1, day 2, day 3. Not names of the days. And so Yah's calendar does not line up to Saturday at all. And so if we're keeping a Saturday Shabbat, it's not from Yah, it's from the rabbis. And more importantly, it's from Rome. Rome forced it on the Jews. Okay. They do call it day 1 and day 2, but they also it's because they have to live, their calendar is now forever connected to the Roman calendar. And so it's universal now. So they can say day 7, but everybody knows it's Saturday in Judaism, right? So yeah, they can say day 7, but they also know it's Saturday. So you could say, hey, I'll see you Saturday or Shabbat time. It's all synonymous now. and it's not disconnected. What is disconnected is the observance of the moon. And it's only part way. They still observe the moon, but partly. In other words, they don't continue. Okay. So, like I said, 1 day or 2 days, if you only observe a 1 day new moon and it happens to be a 2 day new moon, and then the next month it's another 2 day new moon, and then a couple of months later it's the same thing. Well, you've just accumulated like 5 days, right, to your calendar. If you do that year after year, what will happen? Well, you'll end up with a whole another month off, right? And then another month, and then another month. And if you don't do anything about it, calidation, it'll be complete. All your seasons will be off.
Even their months are named after pagan gods. I mean, June is for Janus, Janus, and August, Augustus.
Yeah.
I know there's
Yeah.
a lot more that I studied. And it's funny how it's not funny, it's sad actually, how that, the seed jab has not only the number, but it also has Janus in it.
Yeah. And so, and even the Catholic Church still holds on to those traditions. I don't know about other states, but I remember living in Louisiana. I lived there for 15 years. Big Catholic state. And in every major city, every big city of Louisiana, they have something called Mardi Gras. And each city has I want to say avatar, or what would you call it? Like a mascot, like kind of thing, right? Where I lived, it was called the Janus. It was a two-faced god. New Orleans, they got one called Zulu. Different places, they'll have different names. Shreveport, something different. But they have these gods. And mind you, these are mostly Catholic people. All right, so they have Lent, and then after Lent, maybe it's, well, I don't know what comes first, Mardi Gras or Lent, but I know it's right there together. Maybe it's Mardi Gras first, and then they do Lent. Anyway, it's all part of their celebration, their festivals, right? And it's completely pagan. Matter of fact, women are showing their boobs for beads and stuff, and people are just debauchery right on the street. People are drunk, and this is all Catholics. Yeah. I've seen a lot of that when I lived in Louisiana, and I didn't know where that tradition come from until I started looking at it. It comes from the Catholics, and then there's in South America they got something very similar called festival, where they do the same thing. It's almost naked people and lots of drinking and throwing stuff, and yeah, it's just like Sodom and Gomorrah on the open street. Anyway,
Like New Orleans too.
yeah, that's what I was saying. I've been to New Orleans, and theirs down there is called the tribe of Zulu, and that is one of the dirtiest cities I've ever been to in my life. It has a perpetual smell of urine in that place. It is just gross. You would not want to, you wouldn't want to be there after dark. I guarantee you, it's a bad place. Anyway, that's all I got for you guys. Make sure you look for the presentation that I put on YouTube. It's probably going to be a premiere. Like I said, I got about 30 more minutes to add to it, and then I'm going to post that over there. So that is going to cover the whole thing, the count, all the way to Shavuot, and then we're going to see the siege and why historically it's significant, and then what the Jews did as a result of that. And then and that's over 2 hours. It's a lot of information. So, but I think it's a really good presentation. I got all my witnesses, and I bring in receipts, all the information that I can. I look at it like a court case, like I'm trying to prove a court case. It is a very long video, but and the thing is, some people don't like long videos. I get half and half. Some people love it. Others, they can't handle but 5 minutes and they're gone. They got to go watch something else, right? Well, I can't teach you this in 5 minutes. It's a lot of information, and it's a lot consider. But it's solid information, and I think it proves the calendar and what I've been telling you. I'm not crazy. There's no wheat in the middle of May ready to be harvested and made into flour. Okay. No, there's not. There's barley. And at the time of the destruction of the temple, it just so happens that was the only grain they had because they were locked into the city and surrounded by a wall and couldn't go out to the wheat fields at that point. And so at 50 days, the only grain they had available inside the city was barley. Now, I don't know if that has anything to do with why they keep Pentecost, or excuse me, Shavuot as a barley harvest, because like you saw in the video from Dr. Brown, they're actually making bread in modern times now, commemorating that Omer count of collecting barley, and they're making bread. Why would they be doing that? Why is it not wheat 50 more days, right? In the proper time? Well, there's an answer for that. And that's what that whole presentation is about. It's got a lot to do with the destruction of the temple and the psychological, what it did to the people psychologically, folks. You planted some wheat. You plant some spring wheat.
Yes, I did, just for fun.
Yep. Well, it's a little bit late, but you might be able to pull it off because you're very south. You might be
Yeah,
able to pull it off.
no,
You're
well,
definitely going to have to water and all that kind of stuff. You're not going to be able to wait on rains and stuff like that. You're going to have to take care of it, but you can pull it off.
yeah, but I'm a very high altitude. I live on a mesa, so
Yep.
I don't know if the nights are too cold, but I just want to test, but I was
Yep.
afraid I was too late. But anyway, I'm having fun with it.
Let me know what happens. Yeah, the cold
Okay.
air at night is a thing. And that's why they
Well,
had developed winter wheat was to give them longer, excuse me, different grow seasons and even make it through the snow. But it cannot handle cold wind. It'll kill it for sure.
well, it's too hot in the valley for that, and she's up in a high elevation. And I know Flagstaff is very, very high, so I think she might have luck. But we'll pray on it, Leanne.
Yeah. Let us know what happens with it. I got some people that live in the more of the interior of the United States, like Arkansas and Oklahoma and Wyoming and different places, all the places where it's basically the grain belt. And they send me pictures of the crop every year. And so I could see different places in the United States. I need to have that same thing in Israel with somebody that knows what they're talking about. Because the pictures that I get from Israel in almost every time, Jonathan, they got wheat. Oh my gosh, they're cutting wheat. And I look at it and I see how they're cutting it and they're baling it up for animals. And I'm like, nope, that's not wheat, that's barley, which makes sense. The only grain at 50 days is barley. The wheat's still going to be green at that time. So I know it's going to take me going there, and I've already started thinking about that. And I'm going to have to go for about a month just to get the whole season down and go and talk to every farmer I can talk to, just to make this point about you cannot have wheat in 50 days in May. There's something wrong with that. So Yah preserved his feast in these grains, you guys. And even with GMO, it's still hard to, get wheat in May. Seriously, you can't even do that in when we was at Passover. I had a guy look up the USDA statistic and see, and there are some times if you have a really good year, but it's a gamble. Sometimes you can get earlier crop of wheat in places like very southern Alabama. But it's a gamble. It's not going to happen like that every year. Okay. And I can already tell you when farmers have to get something called crop insurance for every crop that they plant. There's one thing to have farm insurance, but that don't cover your crop. Every time you plant a crop, you got to take out a policy. You follow what I'm saying? Especially if it's a gamble, right? Especially if like you're going to grow winter wheat or something like that, and you got to have winter snow to cover that at a certain time. And if things don't happen just right, you won't get a harvest. So farmers will take out insurance just in case they don't get a harvest. Okay. Yeah, I knew about that, Marty. I mean, it's Margie, the kibbutz, and I'm thinking about all of that and going and talking to people that are doing the organic and by hand way, um, cutting it by hand and all that kind of stuff. There's still people that do that today over there, um, and they're not using GMO grains either. Okay. The only reason people would use a GMO grain is to maximize yield and shorter growing periods. That's what they want to do. All right. So, all right, you guys, that's all I got. If there's no questions, I'm going to pray us out. I will get this uploaded for you guys and put over in class. And then, like I said, be sure to be looking in the next day or so for that presentation on Shavuot and the count. And help me out if you would when you see that. Please share that in different places. It's not a popular topic. People, there's only a small demographic that want to hear about the calendar. And so I'm not, getting a lot of views on those videos. I get that, but I think the topic and the importance of it, and especially the time of season we're in and what it means, and especially the day of Shavuot and what happened in the upper room. If we don't understand all of those things, we can miss out. These are appointments that we're supposed to make. If you got the wrong day, you're not going to make your appointment, right? So I want to have the right days. And we're told that on these feast days, these are special days to Yah. The windows of heaven are opened. He pours out blessings on those days. Special things happen. Bad things happen as well. Bad things have happened on these feast days. AD 70 is a perfect example. But all of that was prophesied. I'm going to show you that in Amos 8 when Yah was fed up with them. This was strike 3, by the way. And every single one of the feasts, starting from Passover, going all the way to Sukkot, Titus was under siege. Jerusalem was under siege by Titus for 8 months. 3 months of which they were inside the walls fighting hand-to-hand combat every day. So traumatizing, I'm sure, to the early Jews. And if I was a rabbi at that time, I'd have probably had second thoughts about this religion, because obviously Yah has walked away, right? I would be ashamed. We messed up. We have done something bad. He's destroyed this temple the same day twice, right? Well, that's something we need to remember. He destroyed that thing twice at the same time. The 10th of Aviv. Excuse me, the 10th of Av. I didn't mean to say Aviv. 10th of Av. Very significant time. All right. If there's no questions, I'm going to pray us out. And